Welcome back, guys. My name is Brandon. I recently picked this welder generator up off Facebook Marketplace. Since then, I've been dragging this around in the back of my truck for close to a month because I don't have a way to get it out. It was easy getting it in there because the guy who sold it to me had a tractor with forks, so he set it up in. I don't have a way to get it out now. So I since bought an engine hoist. That's in last week's episode, but I've kind of left it in the truck because I want to build a frame that goes around this with some wheels on it. So when I remove it out of the truck, I can set it down on the ground and then I can wheel it all around to wherever we need it. Now when I make this stand, what I'm going to do is make it so that the wheels can come off with a quick pin, and it'll have 4 legs on each corner of the skid. So then it will just sit down in the back of the truck and you can strap it down. If you want to wheel it around, then you can pick it up, stick the wheels back on it, and wheel it around with a quick pin on the wheels. It'll be super easy. And if you want to know more about this welder generator, I'll have a couple episodes of some things when I first got it, showing you everything that came with it. And this welder came with a ton of stuff. Last week's episode, we did a full service on it. I think the week before, or a couple weeks before that, is when I picked it up and I laid out everything in the back of the truck. Got like 325 feet of 1/0 lead. Really didn't need this welder. I'm just a sucker for a good deal. This is the original shipping container that set on it, and you can see it's got a little bolt that goes up through with a little nut on the top. My thoughts are you can make an angle iron frame that goes all the way around it that'll set down in it with some holes, so I can bolt it right back on if need be. So if you wanted to hoist it up overhead, you could hoist it with the gear on it. And it's called off-road gear. It's super expensive. It's like $1,000 to build what we're going to build today. And I've got some 5/8 rod down in here. You can't see it, but those are going to be the axles for the tires. And this is what those tires look like. They are rated for 300 pounds a piece. They're air-filled, steel center hub. It'll raise the welder up a little bit, not a whole lot higher than it currently is. I want a fairly low center of gravity. Did a full service on it last week's episode. The battery needed to be cleaned. The terminals were really filthy, so I took those apart, cleaned them, put some special stuff on it so they don't corrode again. When I went and picked it up, I never even tried it to see if it worked. I just tried it for the first time in last week's episode, and that was just to see if the outlets work, and they did. So that was nice. Still don't know if it welds. Maybe we'll find out in this week's episode. Wouldn't that be something? Looks like the widest part of the generator is going to be where these screw heads stick out. So it'll have to be at least screw head to screw head. So it looks like it is 20.5 exactly. So let's add an inch to that. I got all our materials in the workshop all ready to be cut. And I did a little sketch of what we're going to be building. So here are the wheels that I showed you. Here's our 5/8 axle. Here's our frame. We're going to be what's called picture framing this. So we're going to just be 45ing the ends all the way around. On the inside of the 45s, that needs to be our measurement.
My Evolution chop saw is ideal for this because it does a double bevel. It's going to go left and right. You'll see here in a minute.
So from this edge right here, we need to measure from there back this way 40.5 inches. So I'm doing what's called burning an inch. I'm holding it exactly at 1 inch over there because it's more accurate, and I have to mark it an inch longer on this side. So I'm holding that 1 inch mark right to the inside edge of that miter. And then that needs to go that way.
Most miter saws only go in one direction, but as you can see here, I'm able to switch from left to right without having to move the material around.
You don't need to see me cut the other 3, so I'm going to cut those right now and we'll get back to it. Now we can check our pieces to make sure that they're the perfect length by putting them back to each other and checking the length on the ends. And these are really good. So I'm going to go around, prep all these edges with a grinder, clean them up to bright shiny metal because we are going to do it in here. It would be ideal to do it outside using the welder itself to weld all this up, but I don't have a fixture table outside, and by welding it on this, we can weld it and make sure it's perfectly nice and square, and it's just ideal.
I talk about this a lot in my videos, but metalworking is a lot like painting for the reason of prep time. As far as painting goes, that's just a small piece of the project. It's everything that leads up to it, the masking and everything else. That's exactly like metalworking. You have to do a lot of cleanup and a lot of prep before you can actually do any welding.
This needs to go like this. Put one up there. Put a stop here. Then we put a stop here. Another one here. See how easy this makes it, having a fixture table? Just this corner right now is perfectly square because I've dropped in these stops and shoulder bolts, and they're just, everything's lined up now. And if you're wondering how we built this stuff or any other of the things that you see here in this video, I'll have a link to all of this stuff. It's like my ultimate tools playlist. All my tools that I really like, that I built myself. These clamps, this table, this press brake, that portable bandsaw stand, my magnetic drill press, my 150-pound grinder pedestal that's filled with sand to reduce vibration. You can find all of that and more in that playlist.
I want to give a shout out to Bokamal FR. They sent me over this shirt to try out, and I absolutely love it. This is actually the second shirt of theirs that I own. It's very affordable FR gear if you guys have ever priced it out, and it's really quality. It feels great on.
I just had to turn my gas up a little bit. I didn't like the way it was performing, but aside from that, I think it's okay. When
it comes to MIG welding, one of the most common questions is, should you push or pull the weld? For MIG, especially when you're running solid wire with shielding gas, pushing is usually the preferred method. It gives you better gas coverage, it helps keep the weld pool clean, and it produces a flatter, wider bead. That's why a lot of fabricators and structural welders use the push technique. It's consistent, clean, and helps reduce spatter. Now, pulling or dragging can still work. It tends to give you a slightly deeper penetration, which is why it's more common with stick welding or flux core, especially when you're working outdoors or with dirtier metal. But with MIG, where shielding gas is key, pushing makes more sense in most situations. That said, I'm not afraid to switch it up. A lot of the time, I'm picking my direction based on comfort, access, or the position I'm in.
Yeah, that's working out pretty good. I'll actually grind these a little flush just because they're a little proud. That's why I V'd them out. I don't want it just, you know, digging into the corners of the welder. So, all right, let's flip it over and we'll get the bottom. The bottoms we won't grind flush. We'll just leave them.
So as far as welding direction is concerned, if I'm welding into a corner or trying to weld overhead, I'll go with whatever gives me the most control. The real answer is know the difference and understand what each technique does, and then make the call based on what you're working on. At the end of the day, it's about getting a strong, clean weld however you get there.
Now that we've got our frame all built, I want to add some tie-down points to each corner so that we have a way to, you know, tie this down in the bed of the truck or wherever it's being hauled on, trailer or whatever. And there's a couple different ways you could do it. And originally I was going to buy like a foot-long piece of chain and just cut the links in half so that they made like a little U and then weld them to the underside. But then I got looking at the chain, and then I found these, which were $1.39. They're a wire rope clamp, which are going to do the same thing. They are just a U-bolt, and for the price of 1 foot of chain, I don't have to cut it up. I can just bring it home. I didn't have to wait for someone at the store to cut the chain for me into a 1 foot length. I just grabbed 4 of these off the shelf, and they're all pre-made. So it's a little U-bolt, and we're going to weld one of these on each of the corners, so we have a nice place to tie down and you can run a strap to it. We have a discount store really close to where we live, and they sell basically like salvaged and surplus stuff. So these probably came out of a hardware store that went bankrupt or something, and that's why they're so cheap, because I went to Tractor Supply to look at these, and they were almost $6 a piece for these 5/8 wire rope clamps. Just weld them on just like that. Plus it's nice and rounded, so you know, if you go walk by it or whatever, you're not gonna, you know, destroy your leg on anything sharp or whatever.
This little fabrication table I built didn't cost much, but it can do about 99% of the work that I do on it. You don't really need to spend thousands of dollars on a fancy fab table to get solid results. Flat, sturdy, and square, that's really all you need. Sure, the high-end tables with all the clamps and the fixture holes are nice, but they're not a requirement. If you take your time, check your angles, and work smart, a basic setup like this will take you a long ways. Build what works for you and put the money where it matters. Your tools, your materials, and your skills.
So the next thing we're going to do now is lift the welder up, take this factory stand off it, and then mark out the bolt holes onto our frame that we just made.
Sometimes the simplest of solutions seem to just totally escape me sometimes. You can see here I'm kind of like struggling a little bit to get this in the back of the truck. And in last week's episode, you guys mentioned, well, if you just popped your tailgate off, that'd make it so much easier. What an easy solution, but I just never thought of it. So thank you guys for sharing that information with me.
As I look at this, I might end up welding some studs right on to the cart that we're going to build. That way, you just have to put the nuts on the top side. Looks pretty clean underneath. Look at that. Sometimes these bottoms will be all rotted out if they've been left outside or mounted on a truck, but this guy said it was stored inside. I have to believe him. Make our marks right now for the holes so we can drill where they've got to be. Looks like our holes are in a little ways, so we're gonna have to weld a tab on it, and then it looks like maybe bring this back out to align it up. All right, so let's put a little line here, so that's where the center of our tab will go. One right there. Okay, let's go cut some tabs and weld it on. So that way we got 22 1/4 to center, and then this way this will be 16 and 9/16 to center line.
I've already welded on the tabs here. Now I'm going down through and drilling the holes using my mag drill that correspond with the holes in the welder. Using the mag drill just makes it go a lot easier. It's just a lot quicker.
Now I'm going to put some carriage bolts in it, the same bolts that used to be in it, but they're just a little bit longer. So I got to drill it out a little bit bigger to allow for this shoulder up here.
In hindsight, if I had known that when I originally drilled them with a mag drill, I would have just drilled them the right size. But I didn't realize it until after the fact. So now I'm having to go back and make a quick adjustment, but it's no big deal. Now, when you're welding on hardware like this, it can have a zinc coating. So make sure you remove that coating because it's bad to breathe.
Yeah, that should work good. I'll go try it, make sure that's going to work, fit. These studs lined up perfectly onto the welder. So now it's time to put our wheels on them and cut some axles. All right, now that we've got our axles cut, I'll throw them in the little vise here, and we'll drill them out so we can put a pin through them.
And for this, all I've done is sized up the drill bit to the size of the pin that we're going to use.
So now the fun part, we're going to tack the axles on. I've ground everything down. I've made little marks where the center line of the axle is going to go. I'm making sure that my pin is going to go up and down, so that's what's going to hold the wheel onto the axle. A pin, flat washer, that's going to go through the wheel like this. Then we're going to have a washer on the inside, just like this. And then I will tack this on, making sure that this axle is up and down. I can pull this pin, pull this, and then square this right here.
When I was welding the axles onto the welding cart, one of the biggest priorities was making sure that they were square to the frame. So I took my extra time checking everything before I fully welded it. Because if the axles aren't square, you're going to have a bad time rolling this heavy machine, especially when it weighs close to 600 pounds like this one. Everything lined up just fine, and the cart rolls straight as an arrow, but in hindsight, I kind of wish I would have mounted the axles a little bit closer to the center of the frame. Steering would have been a bit easier, especially when trying to pivot the cart in tight spots. As it stands, it's still totally manageable. It just takes a little more muscle if you're turning on uneven ground or you're trying to back into a tight place. It's one of those things where functionality, it works great, but if I ever build another one, I'll definitely tweak the axle position a little bit. I'm always learning something new, even after a few dozen builds.
Slick. Alright, you saw how good that rolled. Now we're just going to take some 2x3 sections that I've made about 3 inches long and put a cap on the end, and I'm just going to weld these on like this. And what these will be is they'll be like little feet. So if you wanted to take the wheels off and then set this down on the ground like a skid, because this frame is always going to be bolted to that welder. It'll never be off the welder. So this will substitute that plastic skin. It'll always be on there. Now you have the options of either setting it down on its feet or keeping it on its wheels. And when the wheels are up, this gives a few inches of clearance off the ground. So you can still, you know, push this cart off-road, which is why I wanted this cart. So you can push it through dirt or whatever, unload it. It'll just be real handy.
When I installed my toolbox in my truck, I wanted to make sure that I could still use my tonneau cover so that the lid of the toolbox was under the height of the tonneau cover. So to do that, I made sure that the top lid was about even with the side rails of the bed. So that raised the bottom of my toolbox off the bed floor by about 3 inches. So that allows me to run material all the way up under the toolbox up to the front of the box of the bed. Well, when I put these legs on this cart, I made sure that these legs were the same height as those legs on my toolbox, so I can continue to slide material under this, and they can continue to go all the way under the toolbox. And it's a little detail like this that is going to make this so much more user-friendly when I go to haul stuff.
That's going to work pretty good. Now I just need to go outside, and looks like we're having a good day out, and just deburr everything. But you can see how that's kind of keep everything off the ground. But you can see I got a bunch of spatter and stuff that I got to clean up. Might even use a needle scaler probably to get that off. That might work good to get in those real tight areas there. And then that's how it would sit on the ground. That would keep the bottom of the welder up off the ground so you don't have to worry about it sinking down in. And then I've got some 2-inch wide by 1/4-inch thick rubber that I'm going to line the whole inside of this with, so that it's not metal on the welder. It'll be, you know, it'll have this little rubber cushion so it's not digging into that bottom.
And here my dog's going to be right underfoot, wants to get his nose up into there, and my biggest concern is that he's going to end up getting something in his eye or get a little metal shard. And you'll see a little bit later on here in the video when I start doing some welding, I didn't even realize he was right there. And hopefully he doesn't get any like arc flash. I don't think he will, but it's something I'll have to be a lot more aware of in the future for sure.
That needle scaler does a pretty decent job. Doesn't get everything, but it gets a lot of it. So we're pretty good all through here. Now all I got to do is just wipe this thing down with some mineral spirits and get some paint on it. And we can get it back in the shop after it dries and put on that adhesive strip and get this thing permanently mounted to that welder. And I'd like to try it out if there's enough time. So we got it back in the workshop, all painted. So I did like 2 or 3 coats of paint, and then I put 2 coats of just regular clear coat on it afterwards. Nothing fancy. And figured I'd go over price with you guys a little bit to, for one, give you an idea of what you can charge to build something like this based on the image that I already showed you. It's almost $1,000 to buy this gear. The only thing we're missing from this is the hoop that went over the top. That'd be easy enough. Maybe another $12, $15 in materials. And the gear that you buy, I don't think is going to be as good as this, in my opinion. You're not going to have these nice heavy-duty tie-offs here. You know, you put a grab hook through it. This is the actual invoice for all the materials that I showed you that I got. That's 2x2 by 3/16 angle. That's a 20-foot length and a complete 20-foot length of 5/8 hot road round. And these are the prices on it as of this day. And that's what I paid with tax out the door. And paint and some supplies. So for $100, you could say it probably cost us to build this base right here. So for me, it's hard to justify buying something that costs $800 more than what I could build it for. And this is built the exact way that I want it to be built. Just to give you an idea, when you're pricing out your work, what things actually cost versus what you think they should cost versus what they actually go for. Because if someone said, you know, $1,000 to build this, off the top of my head, initially I would say, wow, that's crazy. That's a lot of money. And they're even making more profit because you know that they're buying all their steel in bulk. I'm not. So the steel company that I bought this from charged me regular, you know, retail price, I assume. Maybe they give me a little bit better deal just because I do business with them. But yeah, I couldn't find any that's 2 inches wide, 1/4 inch thick, that came with an adhesive back. So we're going to have to spray this with contact cement and then spray the back side of the rubber with contact cement and adhere it down. I got this off eBay as well, and it's supposedly like solid virgin rubber. It feels like tire, like, you know, car tire stuff. And I'm just using some sharp shears to cut it up. Then we'll fill in, you know, between here and a little piece there. So I got these marked out to center where I want to put a hole down through it so that this stud can go up through. I've covered the studs over with some tape because we're going to end up spraying some adhesive on this, and I don't want it getting all through those threads. And we'll give ourselves a little bit of tolerance. This is a gasket cutter, but it should do okay to cut this rubber, I hope. And we're just gonna kind of line it up and give it a whack. Perfect, see that? So then that will sit just like that. Perfect. I've had this kit for over 20 years. It doesn't have a name on the tool, I don't think. Oh yeah, it does. There's no maker name, it just says made in the USA. So I don't know. This is just some heavy duty contact adhesive, and we'll try not to make a huge mess and get it everywhere. This stuff is pretty easy to use. Basically what you want to do is apply it and then let it be dry to the touch. And then spray both parts, and then when both parts are dry to the touch, then you can adhere them down. But if you try to stick the two together when they're still wet, it doesn't work. So while that's drying, I'm going to make some good use of my time and just went over and looked at my fire extinguisher. If you guys have a fire extinguisher like this in your shop, which you should, you want to occasionally turn it upside down and bang the sides a little bit. What that does is a lot of these powdered fire extinguishers will settle out to the bottom. Then you go get a fire and you need to use it, and it's one big solid clump at the bottom of this. So if you guys got a fire extinguisher, which you should have in your workshop, and it's the ABC type that has the dry chemical, turn it upside down. You can almost feel it and hear it. See if you can hear this. You can hear that powder moving around. Sometimes you might, if it's been sitting for a while, you might have to take a hammer, soft hammer, and tap around it to loosen it up, because they get like clumps inside of them or whatever. So yeah, just a little tip, keep you safe. We used to bring all of our fire extinguishers to a fire safety company, and they would inspect them over, look at them, recharge any of the ones that can be recharged and filled, and they would also do that same thing, tap it on the side. That's how I learned it. So it's not something I invented, that's actually what the professionals do. And while we wait for that to dry, remember these rope clamps that I told you about, and about that salvage place that I had gone to? Well, I went back again today, and the place is called Martin's, and I found these grinder discs. They're $1.49 a piece, and I ended up buying every single one of them that I could find in the store. That's a super good deal. That's at least half price from where you'd buy them anywhere else. So very likely some store went out of business, or the store that had these in caught fire. This Martin's company goes around and buys, surplus stuff from buildings, and they sell it at discounts to the public. Tons of them in there. Like I said, 22 of them. I bought every one that I could find in the bin. And it's always different. You never know what they're going to have. One minute it's there, and then the next minute it's gone. So if you don't buy it right then and there when you see it, the chances are if you go back the next day, it's probably going to be gone. But I guess my point to this is that there are deals out there if you search for it. I know on a lot of the projects that I build, people are like, well, where can you get this? Where do you get that? How come you get the metal for that for under $100, and they can't find it that way? Well, you can't buy your metal from a big box store. That's one. You need to source out your metal somebody close to you. Google metal suppliers near me, and see what you can find. Generally, ordering online isn't going to save you a ton of money, because if you order online, you're going to end up having to pay shipping, and metal is costly to ship, and usually they don't ship it in the length that you want anyways, and if it isn't a long length, you're going to pay an oversized charge to have a long item shipped to you. So try to find someone close to you, metal suppliers near me, or go to your local welding fab shop, or even your local welding supply store that supplies gases and stuff, and say, where do people around here buy their steel from? What's the best place for the best price with good customer service? They'll lead you in the right direction. I'm excited. I'm going to put the wheels on it, then we'll take it outside, set the welder on it, bolt it down permanently, and try it out. I've owned this welder for over a month, and it wasn't until last week that I actually tried it to see if it put out electrical power, which it did, so I'm grateful for that. Well, today, now that we got the cart all built, I'm going to see if it actually welds. And we're not judging to see how good this welds. I'm actually just making sure that all the weld settings work. I've got some 1/8 inch 7018 rods, so right now I've got it set for about 120 amps. And I'm just going to test it on a piece of scrap plate to see how it works, and I'm set up for DC electrode positive. Let's see. Warm up for a minute or two.
And this is what I had mentioned earlier. Here comes the dog wandering in, getting right underfoot. And I've watched this clip over and over a few times to make sure, because I wasn't even aware that he was there, that he didn't get some sort of arc flash. But I'll have to be a little more cautious in the future, because look at him. He's like biting on the stump that I'm welding on. I'll just have to be more careful.
Hey, that setting worked, and it worked really good, actually. Let's just tip it back. Ah, oh, it's hot. A little cold. But again, I'm just making sure it works, that's all. That's my first bead I've struck with this, so I just want to know that the welder welds and that it works. So that was 120 that we were just welding on. Let's weld on 120 again. It is about a 120. So the way you figure this out, between 60 and 160 is 100 amps. This is your find setting, so there's, each of these are worth 10. So that's 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120. I might have not had it set on 120 before. I might have had it set on 110 when we were just down here, now that I look at it. I did my math wrong, I think. Yeah, I was a little low on amperage that last time, so this is the second bead that I've ever struck with that machine. That looks better. Yeah, that's better. Let's try the third setting on it. All right, we're now on the 80 to 225 coarse setting, and I'm at about 3.5 on the fine setting. All right, last setting. So there's 100, 115, 130. Oh, I'm so excited. That worked awesome. What a relief that is. That's been honestly weighing on me a little bit. Not that, anybody would ever be dishonest on Facebook Marketplace or anything, but what a great feeling. And that's all there is to it. I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. New videos every Friday. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next week, guys, I will see you then. Take care, stay safe, and God bless.